Am I wrong for following my wife's final wishes instead of my family's demands? I've been wrestling with this situation for months now, and honestly, I don't know where to turn anymore. Maybe I'm just too close to everything to see it clearly, so I'm turning to the Reddit community to see if I'm being unreasonable. It's been an emotional roller coaster, and I'm hoping to get some outside perspective. For some background, my wife and I were married for 12 wonderful years. She was an amazing woman, incredibly intelligent, compassionate, and driven. She worked as a corporate lawyer and mediator, and she was great at what she did. She handled high-stress situations with grace and had this natural ability to diffuse tension. That's one of the things I loved most about her. No matter how bad things got, she always found a way to bring calm and order to the chaos. About 3 years ago, our lives were turned upside down. My wife was diagnosed with ovarian cancer. It came out of nowhere. One day she was perfectly fine, the next we were sitting in a doctor's office hearing the words stage 3 and chemotherapy. Those were some of the hardest moments of my life, but we were determined to fight it. My wife was a fighter, after all. She never gave up easily, and she approached her diagnosis the same way she approached everything else, with determination and a clear plan. We went through 2 years of treatments, surgeries, and doctor's appointments. It was grueling. I watched the woman I love suffer in ways I never thought possible. The chemo took everything from her, her strength, her energy, even her hair. But she never lost her spirit. Even when the pain was unbearable, she kept going, kept fighting. She didn't want to give up, not when she had so much left to do. She was deeply involved in charity work, particularly with a women's shelter in our city. She would volunteer her time as a legal advisor for women who were going through tough situations, domestic abuse, custody battles, job discrimination. She helped these women navigate the legal system and often represented them pro bono when they couldn't afford an attorney. This shelter meant the world to her. She saw so much of herself in the women who came through its doors, ambitious, smart, but facing obstacles that made it hard for them to succeed. She wanted to give them a chance, a way to rebuild their lives. During her battle with cancer, she talked a lot about what she wanted to happen after she was gone. It was a painful conversation, but we both knew it was necessary. One of the things she was adamant about was that her professional wardrobe, her designer suits, her elegant blouses, her shoes, all of it should be donated to the shelter. She said, "I want those women to feel confident walking into a courtroom or a job interview. If my clothes can help them do that, then it's all worth it." Her request made sense to me. She had worked hard to build that wardrobe, and she wanted it to go to a cause that meant something to her. She wasn't the kind of person who wanted to hold on to material things just for the sake of it. She saw her clothes as a tool, something that could be passed on to help someone else. Now, my family didn't always understand her. My wife came from a different world than the one I grew up in. My family is blue-collar, middle-class, and we're a tight-knit bunch. We don't have much, but we've always gotten by. My wife, on the other hand, came from a more affluent background. She wasn't rich by any means, but her family had money, and she was used to a certain level of comfort. My sister Sarah, in particular, always seemed to have a problem with my wife. She'd make snide comments about how my wife was too good for us or how she looked down on our family. None of it was true, of course. My wife loved my family and always tried to make an effort to connect with them. But no matter what she did, Sarah never seemed to like her. When my wife passed away, it was the hardest thing I've ever been through. I was devastated. It felt like a part of me had died with her. The grief was overwhelming, and I wasn't sure how to move forward. I spent weeks just going through the motions, barely able to function. My family was supportive at first, offering their condolences and checking in on me. But as the weeks turned into months, their attention started to wane. Life moves on, I guess, but for me, it felt like time had stopped. 6 months after her death, I attended my mom's birthday party. It was my first social gathering since the funeral, and I wasn't in the best headspace. I was still grieving, and being around people felt exhausting. But I wanted to be there for my mom, so I went. That's when Sarah brought up my wife's clothes again. Now, to be clear, Sarah had already asked me about the clothes at my wife's wake. Can you imagine? We were standing there, mourning my wife, and Sarah sidled up to me and asked, "So what are you going to do with all her clothes?" "I'd love to have a few pieces to remember her by." I was too stunned to respond at the time. I couldn't believe she was asking me this when I had just lost my wife. I brushed her off, thinking it was just an awkward, insensitive comment made in the heat of the moment. But here we were, months later, and she was still asking. At the party, Sarah came up to me and said, "Have you decided what to do with wife's name's clothes yet?" She said it like it was a casual conversation, like she was asking me what I wanted to eat for dinner. I told her, calmly, that I planned to donate the clothes to the women's shelter my wife had supported. I explained that this was something my wife had specifically asked for and that it was important to me to honor her wishes. That's when Sarah lost it. She started going off about how my wife was selfish for not wanting to share her things with the family. She said, even in death, she thinks she's better than us. I was floored. I asked her what the hell she was talking about, and she launched into this tirade about how my wife had always acted like she was superior to her and how it wasn't fair that the clothes were going to strangers instead of staying in the family. She said it was disrespectful to the family's memory of my wife to give her clothes away. At that point, I'd had enough. I told Sarah, in no uncertain terms, that I would rather burn my wife's clothes than let her wear them. Maybe that was harsh, but in the moment, I didn't care. My wife's clothes were going to the women's shelter because that's what she wanted. Sarah had no right to them, and her entitlement made me sick. Sarah, of course, started crying. My mom came over to see what was wrong, and Sarah twisted the story to make it seem like I was being unreasonable and cruel. My mom, being the peacemaker she is, told me to take it easy on Sarah because she was having a hard time with my wife's death. The insanity of that statement almost made me laugh. Sarah? Having a hard time? Sarah, who never visited my wife in the hospital, never offered to help, never even asked how I was doing during those awful months. I couldn't believe my ears. I grabbed my things and left the party. I couldn't deal with their emotional blackmail any longer. My mom later called me and said I had ruined her birthday by being melodramatic, but I don't see it that way. I was standing up for my wife and her wishes, and I wasn't going to let Sarah guilt-trip me into giving away something she had no right to. Since then, Sarah has continued to bring it up. Every time I see her, she finds a way to ask about the clothes, making it sound like I'm withholding some precious family heirloom from her. My mom has also weighed in, saying that it wouldn't hurt to let Sarah have a few pieces to remember my wife by. But here's the thing, Sarah never cared about my wife. She made it clear when she was alive that she didn't like her, and now she's trying to act like this is about honoring her memory. It's not. It's about Sarah wanting something she can't have. I've told my family repeatedly that the clothes are going to the shelter, but they won't let it go. They keep pushing, and it's driving me crazy. I feel like they're disrespecting my wife's memory by trying to make this about them. Enjoyed the story? Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss new content. Share your thoughts and ideas in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think and what you'd like to see next. And if you want to keep watching more videos like this one, just click on the next video. See you there.